Good morning, everyone. I'm your host, Chris Austin. I'm the president of RDF, the Rock Coast Entrepreneurs, and a member of the NSBA Leadership Council, representing Maine small businesses community on a local and state and national level. I created the show to help entrepreneurs navigate the complexities of running a small business by providing a platform where entrepreneurs can share their journeys and partners in our region can showcase the impactful ways they're helping small businesses and entrepreneurs succeed. Every week, we dive into stories of triumphs, challenges, and lessons learned, highlighting how local organizations and individuals are working together to foster a thriving business ecosystem here in Knox County and beyond. Whether you're starting a business, growing one, or supporting the local entrepreneurial community, this show is for you. Let's learn, inspire, and support one another as we continue to build a stronger small business community together. Today, we're exploring a transformative initiative right in our St. George community that's redefining community connectivity, education, and workforce development. With me are two incredible leaders from this effort, Mike Felton and Paul Meinersmann. Mike Felton serves as the Superintendent of St. George Municipal School Unit. Mike has been instrumental in guiding the district into to adopt these innovative approaches to education, focusing on strengthening the connection between schools and the community. Mike, it's great to have you on the show. We're very excited to have you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what drives you for work?
Sure. So as you said, first, Chris, it's great to be here and great to be joined by Paul Meinersmann, my colleague. Mike Felton, I'm the superintendent for St. George. This is my 10th year as the superintendent. I started my career actually out on Vinyl Haven as an Island Institute fellow. I was a fellow out there for 2 years doing college aspirations and social studies. I worked at the Island Institute for a couple of years doing education outreach, and then I was the principal out on Vinyl Haven for about 5 years. Went to law school, came back, clerked for a judge, and eventually worked my way back to the Mid-Coast. And my passion has always been about how community, policy, and education intersect and how they can strengthen one another or not. And my opening for St. George came that St. George was going through the withdrawal process to create their own independent school district. And the superintendent working with them was the superintendent I worked with on Vinyl Haven, George Joseph. And he called me up one day and said, Mike, it might have an opportunity for you. Mm-hmm. So I went up, I interviewed for the job, and I'd never been a superintendent before. But one of the guys on the interview committee, Terry Driscoll, who was on our first school board, was on the town education commission that oversaw the withdrawal, said to me, Mike, I think you have the requisite and experience. Because he really wanted, that group really wanted it, and the town really wanted to think outside the box. And my real charge when I first took the job was to think outside the box and do whatever it takes for kids. And that's the passion that drives me. Our school is a community school district, and the heart and strength of our school is the community of St. George. Our mission, and this mission goes back way before me, it's in the sort of the DNA of the school itself and of the town, is to do whatever it takes for kids and to ensure that every single student thrives. And we look at that in terms of academic growth, character development, and health wellness. So we define health wellness as physical and mental health, social and emotional well-being, and basic needs like food security. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of where I am, that's sort of how I came to be here. I've been fortunate to work with some amazing educators over the years. We've got our school is full of dedicated, passionate teachers and educators like Paul, who take an innovative approach. And we try to give all of our educators a lot of space to be creative and to thrive. But we all come together around our kids, our families, and our community.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mike. Now let's hear from Paul Meinersmann. Paul is the Director of Facilities and IT for the St. George Municipal School Unit. He plays a crucial role in ensuring the successful implementation of the initiative through his expertise in technology, infrastructure, and community-focused solutions. Paul, we're thrilled to have you here. Can you share your story and how you've become involved in this initiative?
Sure. So, Paul Meinersmann, I'm the Technology and Makerspace Director. So like Mike, I started here at St. George the day that we officially became a district back in 2015. And like Mike, I had not been in this role in a school before. And so my path is very circuitous. Dropped out of my first college, came up to Maine to go to college, studied outdoor recreation, and sort of just transitioned from one thing to another until we had our first child, and it was time to move back to Maine, and worked for a social work agency at a group home, transitioned into doing some community-based stuff, but I was the guy that was always fiddling with the spreadsheets. And that sort of led to the IT position, and which was fantastic. I got to do a little bit of that, and I got to do a little bit of social work still. And then, some time passed, and when St. George was going through their process, a friend of mine who was very involved at the time said, "Hey, there's this opportunity," and I took that risk, applied, and I've been so blessed to have been here to have the support of the Mike and the school board, and to work with this amazing collection of teachers that is willing to take me coming in with like some crazy ideas, because like Mike, I'm not tied to like what is traditionally been the approach. And that's just been wonderful to come into teachers' classrooms and be like, what are you doing next month? What are you doing, the next few months? And hey, how about, can we use some of this stuff we've got to make your teaching more impactful and more interesting, both for you and for your students? And there's been some amazing teachers that have been early adopters that have allowed us to really sort of like prove within the school that we could do some of that stuff, and that's helped us begin to grow and move towards where we're at right now.
That's awesome. Nice work, gentlemen. All right, so the next segment is where we talk, and we're going to call this segment Big Picture, the St. George MSU, CTE Makerspace Building, and the connectivity hub. And so, Mike, let's dive into this whole project, this Makerspace Building. I know that I have kids that go to your school. It's really exciting to be able to see it actually. We're building in front of us. It's just really cool to be able to see. So this initiative has so much potential for the community. Can you tell us a little bit about its mission and how it's designed to serve as a connectivity hub?
Sure. So the vision for this really came from the community. When I first took this job, the first year, 10 years ago, I was sitting down with a group of teachers, parents, business owners, community members, talking about like, what are our priorities for our new district in terms of facilities and programs? And we came up with like chart paper full of different priorities, and it was everything from a swimming pool to a rec center to labs to you name it. But in the end, every single person in that room agreed the number one priority was to bring shop back. And that ties back to the Grace Institute, which from 1936 to the early 2000s provided shop and home ec to all St. George students, high school students, for shop and home ec. And that they shut down in the early 2000s, and that was during some of the consolidation period. And parents remembered their time at the Grace Institute and how much that meant to them, and they wanted that for their students. At the same time, we were seeing severe shortages in the trades and technical fields. So there was this push from the community in terms of we want our kids to have this experience, and there was this pull in terms of the opportunities that were available from our kids and what our local businesses needed and what our local economy needed. On top of that, like, kids just learn differently. And I think in this day and age, I think there's a variety of reasons for that, but I think two of the primary drivers are really technology and trauma. In terms of technology, with social media, smartphones, video games, kids' brains are so hyper-stimulated, and all of these technologies are designed to stimulate their brains and keep them coming back for more. So you're working with children who, before they ever get to school, may have an iPad. So how do you engage a brain that is already hyper-stimulated? And we do. We have a lot of our students have experienced trauma. I think in Mid-Coast, Maine, 25% of children have experienced 4 or more adverse childhood experiences. And if you have, and adverse childhood experiences are everything from different like physical, emotional abuse, involvement in the foster care system, parent incarceration, loss of a parent, all these mental health in the household, all of these different challenges that aren't unique to Maine, but it seemed to be in some ways we've got a concentration here in the Mid-Coast that our families are challenges our families are facing. So those two pieces have really affected how students engage in learning. And we realized we had to change our approach to re-engage our students in learning. So part of the primary goal of this was to do that. So I've been good friends with Bobby Deachin, the director of Mid-Coast School of Technology, for a number of years. And we talked for years about how do we bring the work happening in high school, the career technical education, down to the middle level and lower grades. And, Paul and I and teachers in the school talked about, how do we bring shop back in different ways? And back in 2016, a gentleman who passed several years ago, Wick Skinner, who was a former dean of Harvard Business School and really committed to St. George, he came forward to me and said, Mike, I want to give you a chunk of money to do something that has a 50-50 chance of success that you would never do otherwise. And you never get that offer in public education. Mm-hmm. So I worked with Paul and Sonia Szymanska, our former ELA, middle-level ELA teacher, been there for like 30 years or so, a little more than that, recently retired. And we came up with this vision for a makerspace. And Paul sort of brought that idea forward. And that was to bring in, 3D printers, laser cutters, robotics, and it was our way to start bringing shop back into the school. And, Paul could talk more about this, but he did an amazing job working with teachers to help work with them to integrate that into their learning. We saw how much kids thrived in that type of learning. Mm-hmm. And eventually it sort of came together in this vision of bringing together traditional shop and trades with sort of newer technologies, skills, and approaches. And that became the vision for the CT Makerspace project. So the new building that's under construction is about 5,000 square feet. It'll have 2 shop spaces for bolt building, woodworking, and metalwork. It'll have a classroom space, and it'll have a makerspace, so 3D printers, laser cutters, CNC routers, robotics, and sewing machines. And the vision is really to bring together those different types of skills and trades to do the next level of innovation and to support our students in using those skills and trades to become entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. And, the examples I always give is, UMaine is like 3D printing the hulls for boats now. I was talking to a cabinet maker and he uses a CNC router in some of his designs. So I think that merging together those different types of tools and skills, I think is where we are going to see a lot of innovation. And it's recognizing the value in all of those different types of skills and the fundamental value of having students, and Paul uses this term all the time, who are producers of technology, not just consumers. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe one of the last things I'll say, and I'll talk about the connectivity hub, is there's a part of, I think, kids' brains that are starved to build and create. And the story I always give is Jamie McCaffrey, who's one of the early adopters of this. She's had multiple 3D printers in her classroom. She talked one day, she was doing this pretty intensive English lesson with her 4th graders, and they were just sort of burnt out. Some of the heads were on the desk. She's like, all right, everybody stop. And she took out pipe cleaners and let them just build with these pipe, and she said the entire class just lit up again, like all this life came back into them. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're really trying to do. We're not trying to replace traditional academics. This is about integrating CTE pre-K through 12 and changing how we take our approach to teaching. This is just part of how we teach. And the project's got 3 goals. One is to re-engage students in their learning. 2 is to make sure they have the skills to thrive in today's workforce and create the businesses and industries of the future. And the 3rd is really to strengthen our rural economy. Like, this is about rural economic development. Mm-hmm. And so we've been fundraising for many years now. Lots of grant writing, events, appeals, and we've been very fortunate to raise $4.6 million, over $4.5 million for the project. And we got about $680,000 from the Maine Connectivity Authority for this building to also serve as a connectivity hub. So it'll do online learning, online workforce training, and then telehealth. So we're partnering with the Maine Community College System, the Roux Institute out of Portland, to provide different learning opportunities, Midco School of Technology to do adult education programs. And we're also going to have an integrated telehealth paramedicine program where people in St. George and surrounding areas, if they want to use the facility, can request a telehealth appointment, and then a community paramedic could attend the appointment with them, take diagnostics, talk to their health professional, and then also go to their house and do follow-up care, so our community won't have to leave the peninsula for some health care. Wow. And what this goes back to is workforce development and rural economic development. We want our community to build on our inherent strengths of a community of entrepreneurs and help grow that so we have a sustainable year-round community for the foreseeable future.
Incredible. So Paul, I'd love to have you, just talk a little bit about, your perspective and what stands about this project and how do you see it impacting the community from your perspective, both immediately and long-term?
Sure. So, in the very early days of Mike and I talking about sort of the makerspace, and when our makerspace was not much bigger than this room is right now, the idea of figuring how can we both provide our students with opportunities to use these sort of modern tools to create things, but also figure out how we can expand that out to the whole community. And so, I would say to Mike, like, what I would really love is to have an R&D facility for the whole peninsula, so that anybody in this community who has an idea that can come in and we can support them in making that idea come true. And so with this building coming in and this added space and this added equipment, it starts to make that become reality. So, part of this is, as Mike said, is like meeting students where they're at and giving them really engaging opportunities. So, we have a student that's in high school now, and back when he was in 5th grade, a month in the school year, he was really struggling. Was not a kid that saw himself as being successful in a traditional classroom setting. And so I started meeting with him for an hour a week. Like many kids, when I asked him, like, what do you want to do? He wasn't used to having that type of agency in school. And so he really didn't know. I'd asked Mike, I was like, what is he into? And he's like, well, he's got cats. He really loves his cats. And so I said, I hear you have cats. Like, do you want to build an automatic cat feeder? And he was like, sure. So we worked together for an hour a week. He starts coming to school on those days, and we start working on like designing this thing so that we can 3D print it. And as time goes on, he's coming to school not just on the days when we're going to work together, but he's coming to school on other days too, which is something that was not really happening. So throughout the school year, we worked on this. His attendance improved. But the thing that's really crucial is that his mindset and his beliefs about himself changed significantly. So he went from a kid who wasn't coming to school very much because he didn't think he could be successful, to a kid that was like talking about going to college and like designing engines and being an engineer. And so figuring out how we can utilize all this equipment and start to instill in our students a mindset of like, I can create, and empowering them to actually make that happen is such a huge part of what we're trying to do. Not just for our students, obviously, but for the whole community. We can't build this phenomenal facility and then have it only be open for those 175 school days.
That's awesome. Mike, I know that you had mentioned at the end of that of what you were just speaking of. You were talking about partnerships and and how really they've been the cornerstone of this initiative. You talked about the mid-school these partnerships with organizations like the Mid-Coast School of Technology, the Roux Institute, the St. George Community Development Corporation, the St. George Paramedicine Program, the American Legion, Kinney Melquist Post 34, the Island Institute, and so many others, I'm sure. So, gentlemen, I would love, Mike, you go first, but Paul, please add your perspective on this too. Is that can you tell us about how these collaborations are helping to bring these visions to life, and what's the sustainability in engaging and keeping that community and these partners engaged?
Well, I think those partners are our sustainability, honestly. I say often that public education, the needs are too big for us to do it alone as a public school. It's just we can't do it on our own. This has to be a community effort. We need private sector, we need public sector, we need everybody working together. So for the CT Makerspace project, we have 33 business sponsors, and they have been critical to everything that we've done. Steve Ladd, the CEO and president of Steel Pro, has been, and Steel Pro as a whole, has been critical in helping us think about this project, envision it. Our students have gone to Steel Pro and experienced what that's like, this advanced steel fabrication. And he's just been a critical partner in helping us make sure that the work we're doing is tying into what the needs of the businesses are in our community and what the opportunities will be for our kids. John Maxey at Knox Machine Company, our students have visited there. He's been a great partner in thinking about how his business grew from a small metal machining shop making pot haulers for lobstermen to now making pieces for SpaceX and the Department of Defense. Harbor Builders and Chip Bauer there, they've been critical partners. They're on our building committee. and they've been there since day one. Chris Levitt, who's a local contractor, he every year comes in and builds different projects with our kids. This year the first graders built wooden trucks. So all of those pieces, all of those partners, they help us. We couldn't do this without them.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to, I think, our root philosophy. Again, way before me, it's in the DNA of the school and many educators who came before me, that this peninsula is our campus. Like, it's not just the building, it's not just the space around the building. This entire peninsula is our campus, and that's what shapes us, and those are our resources. So by having these different partnerships, and that's, it's Herring Gut, it's Blueberry Cove, it's the Conservation Commission, it's Jackson Memorial Library, I mean, on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
And just individuals who come in and work with the kids. We have a great program, the Dragon Heart Volunteers, with this group of volunteers who go through extra training and commit to being there on a regular basis. And they're providing critical support to our students. I mean, all of this is a community approach to public education. And it's why we can do what we can do. And really, it made this project possible. Like, this project was possible because we had kids selling eggs on the side of the road to raise money, and we had people with resources writing big checks. We had our congressional representatives, Susan Collins, Representative Shelley Pengree. They came to bat for us, and they've brought resources into the project. Governor Mills has been a part of this. I mean, this is bipartisan. It's
Awesome.
It's across all lines, and it's brought a community together. And I think it really shows that it's not just that you can dream big for your kids, you have a responsibility to dream big for your kids.
Absolutely.
And to add a little bit about, the sustainability and also the opportunities. So a couple of weeks ago, Mike and I took 6 high school students of ours, that don't go to St. George High School, right? So all of our high school kids go to different high schools around us. So we took these 6 high school students down to Boston to participate in a hackathon, which is sort of a one-day, super accelerated process of sort of imagining a new consumer product, and coming up with a pitch, coming up with a prototype design, image, using some sort of old-fashioned research, as well as like hands-on cardboard construction, and then pulling that into some AI tools to sort of create that thing and turn it into like a more visually like fancy-looking representation of what might be. So we did this really neat project with this potential partner called the Possible Zone down in Boston that does some really phenomenal work. So we had a meeting with them yesterday and talking about how can we support these students in continuing more entrepreneurial activities like this, of looking at how we can take this thing that they came up with and like, is it possible for us to take it to reality? That would be a really, really big lift. But in having some of those discussions, we kept reflecting on the fact that we've got some local partners that are in the manufacturing space that might be good resources for us to take this idea that these students had and be able to make a real physical thing. And so both having the space where we can start to encourage that type of thinking, but then also having those partners where we could say, like, hey, if we were really going to do this, like you, Steel Pro, or you, Knox Machine, like what would it really take to interface with you to take something like this and make it a reality? And so by having those business partners engaged in this process, it creates opportunities for real conversations with students, whether or not we actually ever build that thing, but it enables them to like have access to those conversations to be like, if I really want to do this, what would it take? So
that's awesome. And it's smart, that the human element, what's in it for me. A lot of people, obviously, they have heart goal, they want to do some amazing things, but also too, they understand the critical role that they play. Like, I think about these small businesses, your partners, they're investing. I mean, they're very active at MCST. We know it. They're recruiting these kids. They're putting kids to work. But we know also that we are challenged with being the oldest state. I know I've talked about it last week, the oldest state in the union, right? I mean, it's an old song. We've heard it many times. But it has to be an investment at a very young age. And I love seeing how invest, because they're making these connections with these kids. And I don't think they realize that these kids are going to remember these organizations, and they're going to continue walking hand in hand. And next thing you know, you're creating entrepreneurs, you're keeping them here. We need them here.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them do realize that. And I know, so Chip Bauer talked about from day one, getting on board with this with Harbor Builders, and like, I need people. Like we're backed up 2 years in projects because we don't have enough people. And Steve Ladd, he offered one of our fourth graders a job at a community meeting. And he talks all the time about how like he does see this as an investment. And I think part of our point has been you can't wait till 10th, 11th grade to talk to a kid about possible careers. Like it's really got to start from pre-K all the way through, where they're building, they're creating, and they're connected with different businesses and career opportunities and pathways in our region and in our state. And you know, my thing is, I don't care if a kid goes and gets a certification in high school and goes to goes work at Steel Pro and does welding. I don't care if they go and they get a PhD at MIT and become an engineer at NASA. If they go start their own business, as long as they're doing what they love to do, what they have passion to do, and they can make a good living to support their family and hopefully be able to stay in our community, then we've done our job. I mean, I think that, and that's part of what we've tried to break down, is that there are multiple pathways to success, and we want our students to not only understand, but to experience those pathways. So we've got first graders that are visiting local landscapers, restaurants, mechanics, to sort of see right in their community, here are these St. George School alumni who are now all grown up, they've got their own businesses, they're right here in our town making a good living. These are possible pathways. So let them understand that at a really young age. So by the time our kids get to high school, they've developed these different technical skills, entrepreneurial skills, collaboration skills, and they understand here are all these pathways available. So when they get to Midco School of Technology, they get to the high schools, they can really dig in and go deeper. And by the time they graduate high school, they're going to be ready to go, whatever pathway they choose.
That's awesome. So we're going to go into our next segment that we're going to talk for the next 10 minutes or so, and it's addressing workforce challenges, and it's not just for for people that work, but also entrepreneurs too, and that life work balance. And a big part of that challenge is childcare and early education. So one of the issues, one of the issues that small business face is finding employees, especially when many potential workers can't return due to lack of childcare. There's lack of resources to be able to get back to work. Mike, how is the St. George School District addressing this critical issue?
Yeah, I mean, first I have to give a shout out to Dr. Jessica Berry. She's our special education director. She's leading the Mid-Coast Collaborative, and she's really dug in deep on this question and focusing a lot with our early childhood education group on birth through 3, or what she calls, I think, cradle to school or birth to school education. And this goes back to a point that, as a school district, we've been talking about for a while. Like, we have seen the needs of students radically increase over the past 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. And they were going up before then, but after the pandemic, there was a spike. And we have more and more students coming to us with severe behavioral, social, emotional, and mental health needs. And that's part of the reason we added pre-K several years ago, is to get those interventions to the kids earlier. And that's now why we're trying to go before pre-K and connect with our families of our youngest children in the community, and help them or work with them, learn from them, ask them what they need, what can we do to help, what resources we can provide you with, connect them with one another, with the school, with other service providers, because everything is really dependent upon, the best investment you can make is in that birth through 4 in early childhood education. Mm-hmm. That is your best return on investment. All the research shows it. That's where you can, with the least amount of effort and resources, help change a kid's life. And if you look as a country where we invest, that is where we invest the least amount of our resources in the overall education system. So I think Jess Berry, the early childhood education group, the Makerspace Collaborative, they're really thinking about how to do that differently. The St. George Community Development Corporation is focused on that. And part of that is providing childcare, high quality, affordable childcare. So you can get students the interventions that they might need at the earliest age, but you also allow then every person who wants to work, they actually can afford to work. Mm-hmm. And they have the ability, and they feel good where they're leaving their child when they're going to work. And as you said, like, we have an aging population, but that's not unique to us. Our entire country is aging. And our workforce population is shrinking. So we need every single person who can work, we need them to be highly skilled and able to work. Mm-hmm. And providing high quality, affordable childcare is part of how you do that. And it's a twofold benefit. You're allowing parents to then work in the jobs that are needed in our community and by our businesses. And you're then getting, children, the resources they need and helping them advance more quickly at these younger ages. So when they come to school, they are school ready to learn, which means then they're going to be that far ahead as they're going through the school system, and they're going to be more engaged in their learning. They're going to benefit more from all the programs that we're offering and just move it along faster. So that way we're not playing catch up in like pre-K to 2. We're like, all right, you're ready to learn, we're moving forward.
Right.
And we've gotten really good at working with families, and our staff is phenomenal, and helping kids when they come in make sure they get to the point where they are school ready and ready to learn, and that they're advancing at a fast level. But we need to invest earlier so more kids are coming to us ready to learn.
So, Paul, you've been at the school for 10 years, right? And I know that this whole crisis with the lack of childcare, this goes before COVID, right? I mean, this has been, it just really got exposed during COVID and after the fact, and we're seeing it right now. So, you're working with students. So, what have you seen these impacts? How, as a perspective of a teacher, like what are some of the signs that you're seeing, and or some of the challenges that you're seeing with these students that don't have these abilities to have childcare, and that that birth to 4 years old?
Yeah, I mean, so the idea that the students, the families that don't have as much support early on, and so you end up with those kids coming into school, and whether they're not yet prepared for school, and that historically has put them so they're always playing catch up. I think one of the things that's challenging is when you're always playing catch up, school is just harder. Like,
sure is.
It's emotionally harder, it's intellectually harder, and so I think the challenge of that is it leads to students being frustrated, and it's harder for teachers to also then bring in some, but might be like, especially early on, more challenging instruction, like integrating career and technical education into your classroom the first few times for a teacher is tricky because it's a change in what they're used to. The rewards are worth it, but those first few times of doing that, teachers have to be convinced sometimes that you can do this. You can bring in these extra tools to change how you instruct, because your students will be more engaged. But when you have a classroom of students that either, a lot of students, some students that have come in either behind academically or behind, having behavioral challenges, like those that often are associated with students, our 0 to 4 kids having more challenging home environments or being less prepared for school, all that makes it more challenging in the classroom and more challenging to start to integrate more career and technical education into stuff.
And I think there's a flip side of that too, because part of what we've seen is when the kids are engaged in that hands-on, minds-on work, I think for a lot of kids, that's where they thrive, and some of the behavior issues then go away.
Yeah.
And it's very challenging for teachers because they've got all these standards and curriculum they're working on, they're trying to get through to make sure the kids get what they need. And then, part of what our teachers have been working on, we had a group working on it this summer, is how do you integrate this hands-on, minds-on approach with the existing curriculum? And again, we don't think this is like a good idea or a fun thing to do. We think every school is eventually going to have to do this if you were going to engage your kids fully.
Mm-hmm. So, gentlemen, when I look at, we talked about, the small businesses, they need employees, and I mean, the fact is, we know that is preventing growth in a lot of these businesses. So that partnership, of the small business community in this initiative is so important. So how do we engage the small business community to help with this initiative? Like what do we do? I mean, this is really, really important. It's not only we got to think about the kids first, right? Obviously, this is so impactful for our youth, but also too, that workforce development, be able to get people back in. So how do we engage that and create that partnership? What's so important there?
Well, I mean, I think the story I always give is to sum up where we went wrong in public education. I was talking to a federal agency, and we worked for months on this grant. and this group did, this federal agency did economic development. And we was to fund the CT Makerspace Building. We went back and forth, and they, they really said, we'll stress the adults using the building, not the kids. And we're like, okay, that's fine. I mean, the adults are going to be using it on evenings, vacations, summer, so that's like 60% of the time. And back and forth, they finally said to us, if even one student uses that building, we can't fund it because we fund economic development. We don't fund public education. And to me, that's what went wrong. We stopped seeing public education as part of what we do is workforce development and economic development. And what's changed, like just what we do with Steel Pro, what we do with Knox Machine, what we do with Harbor Builders, what we do with GC Minery Plumbing, all of these partners we have with Chris Levitt and Tracy Levitt and their contracting business. Some of them are working directly with kids in the class. So if you're a small business, reach out to the school and talk to them like, how can I work, like not just talk about what you do, but maybe do some activity with the kids, like a simple activity. We have our kids visiting these small businesses to see like no one, I didn't understand what Steel Pro was really doing there. I mean, they're shipping all these like advanced steel fabricated pieces all over the world, and right out of Rockland, Maine. So, I think it's have that conversation, get in, work with the kids, and this can work with any school setting. If it's public, if it's private, if it's homeschool, work with local businesses, and have local businesses reach out and get in the classroom and, sort of start that recruiting early on, because you never know, like that kid, they may get fired up about welding, about becoming a doctor, IT, whatever it is, and they may be coming to you when they graduate looking for a job. But I think, and that way it's a true partnership, all the way from birth to career, cradle to career. That's the kind of pipeline we're really trying to build, or this ecosystem where we can help raise our kids so when they graduate, they are ready to go, and the businesses, and they have the skills that are needed by our businesses. But it's got to be a partnership, and that's conversations, that's working together, and it's getting businesses into the school, and it's getting our kids into the businesses.
I think to build on that also, like, Mike said, he didn't really know what Steel Pro did. And I think that we don't necessarily know what are all the small businesses in the area that are doing things beyond just right here. And so, like, Steel Pro is doing stuff like all over the world. Knox Machine, as Mike said, is like sending stuff into outer space, right? And
employing
these are
high school kids to help with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have a graduate who's working there.
Yeah. And so, like, for, there are huge benefits for our students to be able to like see these things and be like, oh, this is happening right here in my community. But there are also huge benefits for all these small businesses to be like, one, like these are potential future employees, and also it's like, of course, it's great goodwill. I mean, like having these students have these really positive experiences. They go back and they talk about with their parents, and like Steel Pro is much more on our mind than it used to be. And when we took our fourth graders there last year, they did a phenomenal job. I mean, it was like students were so engaged, and it was just a really phenomenal experience. So I think there are lots of benefits for all these small businesses to show their community what they do, and there's huge benefits for our students to be able to see what's happening.
That's awesome. Nice work, gentlemen. Before we get into the next segment, I know Dragon Nation is on their way to school right now. So, sometimes, especially with you gentlemen here, we got my girls that are on their way. Hopefully my wife, Lindsay, is on time today. But Nora and Harper, my girls, along with our extended family. We have the twins, Ryan, Bella, and Addie. So good morning, ladies. And gentlemen, I'm sure that you probably would like to say a nice little shout out to your community as well.
Yeah, just a shout out to all the Dragons out there. Paul and I will be back to school soon. We'll see you. Make sure you're on time. And have a great Thanksgiving.
Yeah, one more good day. Like we get through the school day today, and then you get a little time off.
It's funny is that your little spiel that you just did, Mike. Usually the kids will hear that. It's
my school cancellation.
Yeah, exactly.
Call.
Sorry, kids, you are going to school today.
Good morning, St. George. I'll see you in school.
That's right. That's awesome. So just getting to some final words, Mike. What's next for the St. George School District with this Makerspace Building, and how can listeners and community members get involved and support your efforts?
Yeah, so next is, the building's gonna open. We're gonna do a grand opening in August. We're gonna have a big party to celebrate this, big community party. And then it's gonna be open in September for our kids in our community. So right now, what Paul and I and our whole team and school is really focused on is getting the programs up and running. I think if you want to get involved, visit our website, stgeorgemsu.org. There's a CTE Makerspace button you can click. It'll take you, give you a history of the project. We're doing an annual appeal right now, so if you want to support the project, all the money goes to personnel, programs, and equipment so we can realize the full potential of that building. If you're a small business and you want to be a business sponsor, please reach out. We'd love to have you be one of our sponsors. We advertise you on our website, in our mailings. And if you want to work with our kids as a sponsor, please let us know. We're all about connecting and working with the private sector, our local businesses. So, I think those are great ways to get involved.
That's awesome. So, Paul, I'd like to get your final thoughts on what this initiative means to to the district, to you as an educator as well, and just your final thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, for so many years, this was a pipe dream. The very first student I met at St. George, we talked about a makerspace, and I remember saying to him, I don't know if that would happen anytime. And that student's graduating high school now, but it's happening, all summer long, when I would come to school, I would go run over to that classroom that has the best view, and I'd look out the window and see what's changed. And so watching this building come to fruition and thinking about what we're going to be able to do, what we're going to be able to do to engage these students and the community members to really take that idea that if you have an idea and you're willing to put in the hard work, yes, we can help you make that happen. And that's just going to be phenomenally exciting to engage everybody in doing that.
That's awesome. I always like asking this question, gentlemen. So, this is about you individually. What would you obviously are making some amazing impacts to our community, okay? But what would you give advice to your younger self, Mike?
I think my advice would be, you got to be able to ride the highs and the lows. And I think with this project, we've had moments we were on top of the world, like a big check came in, and we had moments where we're like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? The price just doubled. Are we going to have to return all the money? What's going to happen? And we just kept going day in and day out. And that was our whole building committee, our whole committee, our school board, we just kept trucking day in and day out. And I learned you can't get too low and you can't get too high. You just keep your eye on the prize. You just keep going. And I think, and I think I could tell my younger self, but I think until you live it, you don't really get it.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Paul?
I think that, one of the things I talk about with students all the time is that failure is part of the process. And so really learning how to embrace failure as not the end, but just part of the way forward. We have to learn how to fail and recognize that if we're failing, it means we're trying.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't try, you'll never succeed.
Okay. Nice work, gentlemen. So let's just talk about some any upcoming events. Where can folks go to learn more about this project?
Yeah,
This is your time to do your plug.
Yeah.
Here's your elevator speech to the community.
So again, I would visit stgeorgemsu.org, and you can see the whole history of the project there. Reach out to Paul or I. Our emails are online, and feel free to call the school and reach out to us. We love to talk to people about it. Love to get more people involved. Love to get more businesses involved. And I think I would say we need your help to make this a reality. This is about, for us, this is about transforming public education. We want to create a model for other communities across Maine and the country. Mm-hmm. It's about fueling workforce development, and it's about creating a model for strengthening rural economies. We really believe that rural economies can be drivers of innovation and economic growth in our country. We think we're primed to do that, and it aligns in a lot of ways for our community with the roots of who we are as a community of fishermen and farmers, boat builders, mechanics, carpenters, cooks, artists, engineers, all these people who use their hands and minds to build and create good lives, not just for themselves, but for their families and their whole community. And that's that ethos, that history, that tradition, that's where this all sprung out of. And you know, we'd love to have more people be a part of that. We had 20 educators, board members from across the state in Makerspace Building visit our school a couple weeks ago to learn about the work that our educators are doing. And our educators are doing amazing work, and we want to share it and we want to spread it.
And I think I'd just add that, you know, anybody that's curious, come visit.
Yeah.
You know, or, you know, whether you live here close to St. George or you're further away, like find a school and near you and just go and ask, what can you do?
Yeah.
Because the best thing that I think the community can do is be engaged in their school.
Absolutely.
And that kind of brings up this, I really love this community meeting concept. I mean, I really do. I think it's awesome. So tell us a little bit more about, because I think it's something special. It's a really cool thing. So tell us, I'm sorry, I love this conversation. So tell us about the community meeting.
And again, that goes back to the root of who we are as a community school. That's where the magic happens, is that connection between school and community. So every month, a different class runs a community meeting where all students, so it's a student-run event. So you'll have first graders running it one day, one month, you'll have eighth graders running the next month, and they invite different grades and classes and teachers to come up and share fun events that are going on, share projects that they're doing, share it with the entire community. We recognize students who got above and beyond awards for some of our key values like collaboration, perseverance, and empathy. And then we sometimes a band will perform, and we recognize people's birthdays, and we invite the entire community. So you'll have parents there, you'll have community members there, and everybody comes together to be a part of the school, to see what's going on in the school, and for us to celebrate together. And it really sends a message to our students that this is a community school, and that all those people in those bleachers up there, your parents, your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents, they are a part of this school. They are part of your education. They are partners in this with us. Our school is not like the silo where there's community outside and the school inside. We are one. And I think this is a message to the families and to our kids, and our teachers do an amazing job leading that.
Awesome. Well, guys, I'm gonna wrap up today's show. Again, thank you so much for tuning in to Entrepreneurs Hour. A huge thank you to these gentlemen, Mike Felton and Paul Meinersmann, for joining us today and sharing such valuable insights about an amazing program. You know, just by chance, I had RSU 13, and now we have the St. George district, and it's amazing what you all are doing for our community. Listen, if your school district, if you're listening in another school district, I know we're all in it together, but if you haven't started some of these initiatives, please do. Our kids need it, and they absolutely, our community needs it, and this ecosystem that we talk about all the time needs it. So thank you again, gentlemen. Just, calling out all entrepreneurs, if you're listening, and the partners who support those entrepreneurs, listen, we are now booking into January. This is our 10th show. It's amazing. We have listening, folks listening on a radio station, 93.3 WRFR, Radio Rockland, The Buzz. It's just a cute little station. I really enjoy this. It's a nonprofit, folks, okay? We can't do this show without the support of the community, and this radio station absolutely needs donations to be able to continue to serve the public and to be able to do these continued things. So be a sponsor. I know my company, Ardea, we sponsored the show. We absolutely see the investment for it. But also, too, we are learning so much as a business community from all of these experiences on the education side of things, but also, too, the people who support entrepreneurs, but also just sharing your story absolutely helps people. And also talking through it, it's almost like a little therapy session. So that's a nice positive thing as well. Being Thanksgiving is this Thursday, I would just tell you I'm thankful for guests like you guys. Thank you again for coming. But also, too, for the future of this show, I would love for you to be on the show. Please reach out. Let me know. Also, I just want to give out a shout out. We talked a little bit about this Mid-Coast collaboration for this child care. I know that the local Chamber of Commerce, the Penn Bay Chamber of Commerce, led by Shannon, is doing some amazing work. And our chamber really needs the support of this community. get engaged with your chamber. The chamber is invested into initiatives such as this, and I just want to say, invest into your chamber. Your chamber was there for you during some really difficult times and advocating for you, reopening, and really helping these things. Give back. Get back involved with your chamber. It means a lot. Next week, we're going to have AJ Staples, a local plumbing contractor, on our show. So I'm excited to have AJ. So AJ, if you're listening, you should bring your wife, because she'll probably keep you in line, but also too adds some value as the entrepreneur. And just tune in next Tuesday at 7 a.m. And then the following week, we're going to have some St. George Peninsula 2 businesses. I'm going to share that next week. These guys are going to be quite the show, I have a feeling. And it's just really cool. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful Turkey Day, and we will talk next week. Thank you, guys. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, Facebook.
Thanks, Chris.